Benito Mussolini, the king of Italian fascist pride. It is better to live one day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep. This is a quote from Benito Mussolini, conveying the philosophy that shaped his entire legacy as a political leader who later on became a fascist dictator of Italy. In his quest for power, he played a noteworthy role during World War II as an ally to Hitler's Nazi Germany. While he managed to reach the top and reshape the political system of Italy, the very bricks that built the foundation of his fascist movement eventually led to his own demise. In today's episode, we are going to explore one of the most notable leaders of World War II and how this man became known as the father of fascism. Named after the liberator of Mexico, Benito Juarez, Benito was born in the village of Dovia in Romagna, located in northeast Italy. In order to learn more about who Benito has become later in his life, we must look into Benito's background and how he was raised as a child. Benito's father, Alessandro Mussolini, was a revolutionary socialist who wanted to reshape the societal order they lived in. During his childhood, Benito was often bullied by his peers. However, his father Alessandro, who is a violence-driven man, always pushed young Benito to fight back in honor of upholding their family name, Mussolini. One day, Benito came home with a sobbing face after having a rough day at school as a kid. Alessandro told the weeping young Benito that tears are for women. You need to start fighting back. Immediately after, young Benito chased after his bullies and violently struck them with a pointed rock, not stopping until the young bullies ran in fear. This was when Benito's father displayed pride and joy for his son, who stood up for himself against his bullies. However, this is when Benito started taking things a little too far. With his upbringing, violence became cemented in Benito's values, for what his father taught him at that early age never left him since then. To win respect, always carry a sharp knife and use it when you must. At only 10 years old, Benito stabbed a fellow student in the hand, causing his expulsion from the religious boarding school that he was attending. This was no isolated incident, as he repeated a similar act when he was 14. Surprisingly, even with such a checkered background, Benito still managed to complete his schooling and received a school diploma that enabled him to work as a teacher for a short while. Benito lived in dire poverty. Along with his father, he grew up spiteful of Italy's powerful upper class that lived in abundance and luxury. All the while on their side of the world in Romagna, families were suffering from starvation. The feeling of envy accompanied this spite, for Benito also wanted to attain that kind of power and glory. It was against this backdrop that his ideology was shaped later in life. His teenage years were its earliest manifestations. He led his classmates in a student revolt to improve the quality of bread served at his school. Benito was exceptional in school and even received the highest of honors. However, due to his socialist leanings, aside from his father's reputation, he was rejected from a job position as a town clerk in Perdapio. With no job prospect in sight, he set out for Switzerland, only to find out that it is filled with hopeful Italians in search of better job opportunities, but ended up under terrible treatment by the locals. He spent his nights at Italian socialist clubs to discuss their discontent with the Swiss, as well as to plot their rebellion. Benito had the gift for oratory speeches and the display of knowledge, and this impressed a group of illiterate socialist masons, which urged them to make him the secretary organizer of the Lausanne Association of Bricklayers and Manual Laborers. It was during these years that he developed his skills in swaying the masses with his talents. He expanded his horizons when he became an editor of a socialist newspaper in Austria-Hungary. During these times, he was in and out of prison for crimes of violating laws about press freedom and the incitement of violence. In 1914, he split from the Socialist Party and built his newspaper and used it to light the fire of unrest across the country by encouraging violence. Benito briefly served during the First World War, representing Italy, before his wounds caused him to be discharged. At the end of the First World War, Benito was unsatisfied with the terms set by the Treaty of Versailles after the war ended. As a result, he eventually formed the Fasci Italiani di Combattimento, which is an organization of fascist groups. This time, his former socialist allies were now his enemy, encouraging war veterans to become violent against the socialists. Eventually, the growing violence and chaos urged King Victor Emmanuel III to dissolve the parliament in 1921. The fascists won the elections, and Benito occupied the seat of deputy in the parliament.
Il nuovo grado di primo maresciallo dell'impero.
The party was renamed Partito Nazionale Fascista. When the fascists took power, they started to seize Italian cities and burn down communist and socialist offices. When the fascist threat finally moved toward Rome, the king eventually dissolved the government, leaving Benito to forge it anew. In 1925, Benito Mussolini, upon his declaration, became the dictator of Italy. During his rule, there were mass restrictions towards socialists, communists, and Catholic groups through arrests and persecutions. The fascists took control of almost all of the media and broadcasted propaganda through newsreels. Press freedom was extensively constrained. Although he initially displayed disapproval of Hitler, Mussolini eventually partnered with Germany and joined Italy with its quests. He expressed support for anti-Semitism and adopted it within Italy as well. He provided thousands of troops for Germany in the Spanish Civil War of 1936, supporting Francisco Franco in toppling Spain's Democratic Republic. Together with Germany and Japan, they formed the Axis powers after signing the Pact of Steel and the Tripartite Pact. In 1940, under his leadership, Italy officially declared war against France and Britain, entering the country into the Second World War. With Benito's decision to enter the war, it soon became apparent that Italy was not prepared to fight in any way, shape, or form. The fact that the United States could produce more planes in a week compared to Italy in a year was appalling. In addition, Mussolini was not a great tactician. He was known to change war plans on a whim and execute poorly drafted attacks on France that made little to no progress. Mussolini did not do a good job either with regards to his North Africa campaign, to which Germany would temporarily come to his aid. Things did not end well for Mussolini. During the war's nearing end, it was clear to the Italian citizenry that they were on the losing side. In 1943, his very own Grand Council took him out of power and arrested him. In aid, Hitler sent German forces to Italy to retrieve Benito, dividing the nation into two. This resulted in Mussolini being handed over to the German-occupied side and created an Italian Social Republic. Benito became a puppet leader for Hitler, and he was tasked with killing thousands of Italian Jews in the process. When the war ended, Mussolini was eventually captured, and it was said that he died through an execution by a firing squad in 1945. The lion had finally lived a day and went to his demise. Yet the lion died with little to no honor from his pride. His body hung publicly in the disgust and hatred of the common folk. The lion will only be remembered as the father of Italian fascism, whose dreams of absolute rule stood for a short amount of time. Thank you for listening. In case you didn't know, hitting the like button helps the channel quite a bit. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can join me again next time as we look into the life of other historical figures that shaped the world as we know it.